Hello and welcome to the BYU Family History Library webinar series. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Olive Esplin and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You're welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar is on August 20th with Rachel Darenthal. Her presentation is entitled Wrong Until Proven Right, Think Like a Genealogist. If you would like access to a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we are pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant, who will be talking about getting to know the new merge experience in FamilySearch Family Tree. Before we begin, here's a little bit about our speaker. After years on the sidelines, Kathryn began doing family history. Somewhat to her surprise, she discovered that she loved it. Her specialty is helping new family historians find success and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Library Family History Center and presents at other family history events. Her column on the family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. In addition, she's a regular contributor to the FamilySearch blog. Kathryn works as a technical writer and instructional designer with a focus on usability and process improvement. Her current work assignment includes developing training used on mobile devices. Besides family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and real maple syrup. If Kathryn is ready, we will turn the time over to her.
Great, Olive, thank you so much. I will just share my screen here. Okay, are we good to go?
Yes, you are.
Wonderful. Well, everybody, welcome to our webinar today. We're so happy to have you with us, and we have an exciting topic to talk about, which is a new experience on FamilySearch.org, the new merge experience. So here's what we've got on our schedule for today. First of all, just a little background review. We're going to talk about some basic concepts of duplicates and merging. Then we'll talk about why a new merge experience was needed. Then we're going to kind of take a little detour to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is very relevant to merging. It's what is an intended identity and how does it help with merging? This isn't specific to the new merge experience, but it is something that will be very helpful in using the new merge experience. And then finally, we'll spend most of our time walking through the new merge experience. So basic concepts, let's just review a few basic concepts about duplicates and merging. So it's worth remembering that the goal of Family Tree is ultimately to have one complete, accurate profile for each person who's ever lived on the earth linked to other profiles by correct relationships. So with correct spouses, correct children, correct parents, and so forth. In a shared tree, okay, the ideal is one profile per person, per human, right? But in a shared tree, sometimes users are going to create duplicate profiles, usually unintentionally. So these duplicate profiles are created for the same human being, and when that happens, the profiles need to be merged. Correct merges help clean up the tree, so they reduce confusion and duplicate effort. However, incorrect merges, or in other words, merging two profiles that aren't for the same person, cause many problems. Here are just a few. They cause confusion, especially for somebody who's trying to learn to do family history or maybe is trying to learn to use Family Tree and they come in and go, why are there 5 Alan Lockwoods in here that look like the same person? They also can generate incorrect hints. So FamilySearch's hinting algorithm. So picture in your mind with me on the profile page over to the right, there's a research help box, and this often will have record hints in it, hints for sources about the people. Well, when we merge two people incorrectly, usually they end up being a combination of information about two people, which, for somebody that didn't actually exist because it's a mangled record. And that messes up the hints that are shown because the hints, Family Search's hints, rely on the information on the profile page. So when it's accurate, the hints work wonderfully. But you've probably heard the old expression, garbage in, garbage out. If we feed Family Search garbage, so to speak, because of an incorrect merge, then chances are pretty good that they will give us back some incorrect hints. I have found over the years since, actually ever since Family Tree was rolled out back in 2012, that once a bad merge is made in a family, it tends to snowball. So the bad merge kind of mangles the record. It gives people parents that are totally different. It might give them a different birth date, a christening before their birth, all kinds of problems. Once that happens, people tend to do more bad merges in the family. I guess because the information is just mixed up. And so people go, well, I guess these two John Lockwoods are the same people because they're in the same family. And people jump to conclusions, but it's really based on faulty information due to bad merges, and they just snowball. The result is that bad merges can take a lot of time to repair. So the best time to stop a bad merge is actually before it starts. In other words, not to make it in the first place. So that leads us to the next question we want to answer. Why was a new merge experience needed? Because the old one wasn't bad. The old one was helpful, but there was room for improvement. So the old one offered, you may have seen it before, it offered some minimum guidance. So for instance, one time I remember merging a person that their birth year was 3 years apart, and the trouble was one of the birth years was an estimate, and I'd been able to prove that the two people were actually the same. But because of I actually didn't follow a best practice at that time because I didn't know about it. I didn't clean up the profile with the error beforehand. So when I tried to merge them, Family Search said, hey, wait a second, these people are born 3 years apart. Are you sure you really want to merge them? So it did offer some minimum guidance, but not really what was needed, to be honest, what was needed to be sure that the merges were correct. Another slight disadvantage was that the old merge process was pretty long. There were 3 pages that you had to walk through. Plus, when you got to the last page, there was no comparison at the end. So you lost your ability to see the two profiles you were trying to merge side by side. If you wanted to see it, you had to go back. You had to hit the back button. You didn't see them on that last screen where you actually performed the merge. Another disadvantage that I only am just realizing what a disadvantage that was is that certain changes were allowed during the merge. So you could, for instance, not choose to bring over parents or not choose to bring over sources. And what was happening is very often people would choose not to bring over things that they should have brought over. And then that caused more confusion. Like if parents got disconnected, somebody would recreate the parents, not realizing they were in family tree, or they'd hook the wrong parents to the person. So doing those changes in the middle of the merge was just really problematic. And then finally, for those of you who have been in some of my other classes, you'll probably laugh about this because you know that I really, really disliked the canned reason statements. So the old process had 4 pre-written reason statements that you could pick from. The trouble was, most of the time people picked a reason statement that didn't apply. So one example is people would pick the one that says everything matches when it very clearly didn't. In fact, most of the time that I saw that reason statement used, everything matches, it didn't. It was very rare to find that reason statement used correctly. So the old merge experience was definitely good, but there was definitely room for improvement. So, as a result of it maybe not being quite as helpful or strict or whatever we want to say, as it could have been, bad merges continued to be a problem in Family Tree. The new merge experience has significant improvements that will help reduce bad merges, and this is very exciting. Okay, with that being said, let's take our little side journey and talk about intended identity and how it can help us do accurate merging. So, what is intended identity? Well, when someone creates a person's profile in Family Tree, they intended identity, they intend the profile to represent a certain human being. So, this is the intended identity. I have a grandparent. I create a profile for them. I intend the profile to be about them. Now, that may sound like a no-brainer, right? Like, what else would you do besides create a profile that represents a certain human being, a certain person in your family? But the problem arises in a shared tree because we don't always know the intended identity if we didn't create the profile. And the profile can actually get changed from the original intended identity. Identity is typically established through names, dates, places, and relationships. The intended identity is usually shown in the earliest changelog entries. I say usually because once in a while, the earliest changelog entries actually don't have enough information to establish the original intended identity, but most of the time they do. So that's a pretty reliable way. Those are nice words on a screen, right? But let's look at an example. I think it will make it a lot easier to understand. So I wanted to know the original intended identity of this Alan Lockwood, ending in his PID ends in 5DD. So I opened up his changelog, scrolled clear to the bottom, and I looked at the very original information that was contributed back in 2012. And just a little tip here, whenever you see information that was contributed by FamilySearch back in 2012, that actually means that it came from the earlier system, which was called new.familysearch.org. So this profile came into Family Tree in 2012 with this original information. So it was intended to represent the person who was named Alan Lockwood. So we've got a name there. He was christened on the 3rd of October in 1866 in Dronfield, Derbyshire, and his parents are established as George Henry Lockwood and Mary Nuttall. So this is a pretty good intended identity. This would be enough to uniquely identify this person and not get him mixed up with other guys named Alan Lockwood. Why is intended identity important? Because, as we mentioned earlier, the apparent identity may have been changed. So the identity that we see on the profile page may have been changed through bad merges or incorrect sources being attached, and even wrong relationships like wrong parents being attached, so that it makes it look like the person is someone different than they were originally intended to be when they were added. The great thing about intended identity is that it gives us a baseline, so a kind of solid foundation so that we can be sure, or more confident at least, that we're merging correctly because we're comparing who the profiles were originally meant to be. And that really does give us the best method or option, the best chance of being sure that we are correctly merging people, that the two profiles really do represent the same human being. Here is a tip when you're merging. You can and may need to use the intended identity to find more information to determine if the two profiles should be merged, because sometimes even with a pretty good original intended identity, you don't have everything that you need to determine if the two profiles are for the same person. Here's an example. So suppose that two profiles have the same name, but One of them has birth information and the other doesn't. Well, then, how are we sure they're for the same person? And one profile has parents and siblings, but the other has spouses and children, and each of those are separate. So, like the one only has parents and siblings, no spouse or kids, the other only has spouse and kids, no parents or siblings. Even with the same name, that information, when there's not enough to match it up, we can't really tell if the profiles are for the same person. So let's walk through an example here. So here we've got three little mini profiles, if you will, for a man named Alan Lockwood. Alan Lockwood, Alan Lockwood. Are these the same guy? The truth is, we don't have enough information with just what is here. So the first guy has a wife named Mary, a daughter named Elizabeth, who was christened in 1870 in Derby, Derbyshire. Next guy is born about 1840, but since there's no birth year on this guy, that doesn't tell us if he's the same guy. This guy married a woman named Mary, and her last name is Harwood, and they were married in 62 in the same county in Derbyshire. Well, could Mary be this Mary? It's possible somebody who married in 1862 could have kids in 1870, but do we have definite proof? We don't. So in this example, I did a little more research and found that this woman here, her married name was Quibel. So I found her daughter Elizabeth in civil registration, and it says the mother's maiden name was Quibel. So with that information, I go back and look for a marriage between Alan Lockwood and Mary Quibel, and guess what? They got married in 1860, which is 2 years before this guy married his Mary Harwood. So, based on that information, we used what we knew here to discover what we didn't yet know and to find enough information to say, oh, these people can't be the same because this guy married Mary Quibel before this guy with the same name married his Mary Harwood 2 years later. So these people are not the same, but we look over here to this guy. This is a christening for Alan, christened in 1844. And we look on this and we see that his dad is Samuel and his occupation is a painter. Well, guess what? When we go over here to the marriage record of Mary Quibel and Alan Lockwood, we see that Alan Lockwood's dad is listed as Samuel, a painter, and everything lines up. A guy who's born in 44 could be getting married in 60. Wait a second. Christened. Christened in 44, so we've got 54. That one, okay, on this one, I think the birth year was actually earlier. His because a guy in who was born in 44 probably wouldn't be getting married that young in 60. So, but if this guy was really born about 1840 and just got christened later, then that would explain that discrepancy. And the fact that we've got a match here with Samuel and his occupation and it matches the marriage record, then we can be confident that these two profiles are for the same Alan, but this one is not the same as either of these guys. So that's just an example of how to use intended identity to gather the necessary information to decide if two profiles really represent the same human being. Okay, with that being said, we are ready to walk through the wonderful new merge experience. So we're going to divide this into two sections, the new layout and the new process. So here are the key improvements in the new layout. There's only one page instead of three. The profiles are shown, the information from the profiles are shown side by side, which makes it easy to compare. We get a preview of the survivor, which we actually didn't, well, we sort of got that in the old merge experience, but it was hard to keep in your head and hard to make sense of. The new layout is much easier to see the preview of what the survivor will look like after the merge. And then also the new one addresses a concern that I've heard complaints about for years, and that is that often when you were trying to look at the merge information in the old process, like family members were not lined up the same. So person A's parents might be across from person B's spouse, making it very hard to compare the relatives that were attached to these people that you were considering merging. So let's just walk through and see how this looks on the new layout. So here we're trying to merge Alan Lockwood, and we've got three columns for easy comparison. The first column shows the person who will be deleted if we finish the merge. The next column shows the surviving person, but in their current state. And the last one shows what the survivor will look like if we go through with the merge. I don't know about you guys, but I just find this incredibly helpful to see, okay, person A, this is what they look like. Person B, this is what they look like right now. And this is what I'm going to get if I merge the person. It just makes it so much more intuitive and easy to see any problems and easy to see what the results of my choices are going to be if I complete the merge. Here is the wonderful new feature where you can group by relationship. The default is to group by family, which honestly I don't find quite as useful personally, although you may. So let's take a look at what it means to be grouped by family. Here's person A, Frederick Gunton, and group by relationship is turned off, so that means it is grouped by family. And here are his parents, and here is he's here. He doesn't have any other siblings listed here. That's just him. Because you can see this ID matches this ID up here. Then this guy who's going to be the survivor if we complete the merge, here are his parents. Here is the Frederick that we're considering merging, and this guy has a sibling. So this actually isn't too bad. You can kind of see the similarities here, but look what happens if you turn on group by relationships. Then, like relatives are shown next to each other. So here's parent one, John Gunton, shown next to the other parent one, John Gunton. Here's the mom, the mom. Notice they've got different PIDs. So these are different people who will probably eventually need to be merged. But for right now, I can at least say, okay, this Frederick has the same parents apparently as this Frederick, especially with the mom's unusual maiden name. I would want to probably do a little bit of checking on that, but it's looking really good. And when I say a little bit of checking, I'd probably want to, check the parents' marriage, make sure that John really did marry somebody named Jane Lee. Um, there's different things you can check as far as that goes. Are they the only Guntons in the parish where they got married? These people lived in England. So you do, I'm not saying that this absolutely proves that they're the same people, but it sure gives you a good view into that family and some good reason to believe that they're the same. And then you can do any additional checking that you need to. Okay, that is basically the new layout. So you can see how simple that is. It really just gives us great tools for deciding whether the merge is correct. Let's look at the key improvements in the new process. So one of the big ones, they're actually all kind of big, is that there is a recommendation on whether or not to merge. And I don't know about you, but I think that is so helpful. Because on the old screen, you sometimes got warnings like we talked about, but there wasn't really any overall recommendation. And especially, I could imagine that being very helpful to anybody who's just getting used to doing merging or just starting to work in Family Tree. Inconsistencies are clearly highlighted, not just a few of them, but all of them. Changes can no longer be made during the merge. Huge improvement. And then also, most canned reason statements have been removed, which means that they won't be misused or people will not just say, well, another one of my favorites was, there are minor conflicts, but I still think they're the same person, or there's not enough information to tell, but I still think they're the same person. Most of the time, those reason statements were used, the merge was wrong. In my experience, that's just personal experience. That's not any data from Family Search or anything. But almost every time I saw those reason statements used, the two people were not the same people. So I'm very happy that those canned reason statements are gone. So let's look at the recommendation on whether to merge. It's right at the top of the merge screen. So it's right in our faces. We can't miss it, and it gives some really good guidance. So there, you notice this one says it's got a green check and it's saying, yeah, you can merge the duplicates, but it also says, it explains it in more detail. No significant inconsistencies, but you still should find proof that they are the same people. This is one of four messages that you might see. Let's look at all the messages. The messages are based on a Family Search automatic evaluation of consistency between the two profiles. So if there are no obvious problems, you get the green check with the message. If there are a few inconsistencies and they're kind of minor, they're not really, that they could be right. They're not like so bad that you say, oh, these can't be the same people. You don't get the green check mark, you get a question mark, and you do get the advice to review the inconsistencies carefully to be sure that these people really are the same, that these two profiles really do represent the same person. Then the next step up from that is major inconsistencies. So this is where the inconsistencies are so bad, either there's a lot of them or they're very significant, like too far apart in years or too far apart in birthplaces. Merging is not recommended. And then this last one is very helpful, that Family Search is just simply forbidding certain merges. You just can't do them. There are always merges that have some really bad logical problem, such as, let's look at an example. This person is trying to merge, well, this is just a screenshot of an example. So our theoretical user here is trying to merge Alan born in 1894 with Alan born in 1864, and these guys actually are father and son. So Family Search says, "Hey, I can see in the tree that this is parent and child. You can't merge a parent with a child because obviously the parent isn't the child." So there are other reasons that we're not going to go into, and there aren't really that many, but they are all really good solid reasons. And here is a link to the knowledge article that explains what the other reasons are. So if you ever find yourself getting an unable to merge and the short description here, you can go to this knowledge article and see more detail on why merges can't be done sometimes. Okay, back to the new process. In the new process, everything is transferred to the survivor unless there's a conflict. And in that case, you get to choose. Again, such a good process that is really going to help us avoid mistakes. So we see two examples on this actual merge. Here we've got different birth information. We've got one that is 7 December 64 drawn fields, so they're in the same place. This one says about 1865. So this isn't really an inconsistency because late 64 definitely qualifies as about 65. So we don't see a warning here that there's a problem, but because the two items don't match, we get to pick which one we want. The survivor is it when there's a conflict or a difference, the survivor is selected by default, but you always want to pick the better information. In this case, the better information is the survivor. Like the about date is not as good as the exact date. But if this information over here had been better than this, like suppose this said about and this had the exact date, I would click this one. The same is not true of the christening. Notice that there's no conflict, but that's because there's no information on the first person. So because there's only one christening and no conflict, this information automatically comes over to the survivor, and you cannot make that not happen. This is probably one of the things I've heard the most complaints about the new merge experience, but I've got to tell you that I'm really happy about it. Not only for the reason that before a lot of information was being left off, which shouldn't have been left off, but the truth is, it is a best practice to make corrections before doing the merge. Because in doing so, you may discover that the profiles really aren't for the same person. So you don't want to, in other words, merge two profiles where you know that one of them has mistakes. Because you just want to clean it up. You want to start with a clean slate on both of them with the best quality information, and then you'll be able to make the best decision for your merge. Sorry, I have to grab a little bit of water there. Okay, here are the examples of the improved guidance that will show up for you during the process. And this is fantastic. I am so happy about this. Like, you can't miss this. It is so clearly labeled. So here we've got, and it's described as well. So here we've got number one, inconsistency. The names are different. They're not badly different. And could they be the same person? Yeah. There could be Matthew Thomas, and Thomas just wasn't listed as a middle name on this profile, but it's worth looking into. Down here, we've got another one. The birth dates are at least 1 day apart. We've got separate years. The location is a little more concerning. It's close, but they're in different counties. Well, did the boundaries change? That's possible. So, but definitely this is an inconsistency that we would want to look into. So the yellow boxes are on the less serious side, but we definitely still want to review them. On the other hand, the red boxes are more serious and may provide pretty good indications that the profiles represent different people. And again, the inconsistencies are detailed and described here. So we don't have to just wonder, oh, they just sort of don't match, but instead, okay, the birth dates are over a year apart and the fathers have conflicting occupations, which can be a red flag. So we can pay special attention to these and really do more research before we decide to go ahead and merge. When you've carefully reviewed everything on the merge screen, you've got three choices. If you decide, oh, this merge is not correct, or actually, shoot, I should have put this here. If you're not sure, you want to click cancel. You don't want to do a merge or mark somebody not a match unless you're absolutely positive. So these two options, not a match and merge, you should be positive before choosing those. But if you're not positive, then just go ahead and cancel and it just backs you out of the merge. So you can do more research or you can say, wow, I can't find the information. I've got to move on to something else. If you know the merge is wrong, you've got absolute proof that it's wrong, then you want to click not a match. And if you're positive it's correct, you click merge. Let's look at each one of those. Not a match first. So not a match is really simple. You get a pop-up here that lets you explain why you believe these people are not the same. I love reason statements. Probably a lot of you, I recognized a lot of names on the participant list. So a lot of you know that I'm a huge fan of reason statements but I also don't believe that they need to be long or complicated. All we have to do is hit the key points, right? We can just, in this case, even though these guys, John Fallowfield, same unusual name, and same location. They're both born in Holme on Spalding Moor in Yorkshire. The years are too far apart. So, despite the other consistencies, that one's a deal breaker that they were christened over 40 years apart. So, since that's the big reason I know they're not the same person, that's what I put in the reason statement. So it was simple, it's not long, not complicated, but it hits the key points. So that's how you do not a match, and then you click save. Then in merging, we're going to look at two different scenarios. If you get the kind of everything looks good here, no significant inconsistencies recommendation, this is the only time right now, at least, and of course this is subject to change because FamilySearch is constantly improving things. But right now, as of the date of this recording, you'll get a canned reason statement that says that FamilySearch found no significant inconsistencies. Well, that's not wrong. That's not incorrect. But in my opinion, it's not really a reason the merge is correct. It's just saying, hey, we didn't find any conflicts. But I always feel like it's better to describe why you feel the merge is correct. So fortunately, you can change, you can edit this reason statement. So here's an example of one that I believe would be more helpful where I've hit the high points. I mention the name of both people and I give the PIDs of both profiles, and then I hit the high points of why I think they're the same. They were born the same year, in the same location, they had the same parents, and they had the same siblings. And remember that your merge reason statement goes into the change log. So everybody will be able to see that. And you, in fact, may find it helpful later if you ever come back and wonder, oh my goodness, why did I merge those people? And this just gives us good confidence that the merge we did was correct. When there are either minor or major inconsistencies, notice that there's no canned reason statement, and FamilySearch offers this very helpful guidance saying, please explain why you believe these two profiles are the same despite the inconsistencies. And my recommendation to all of us is don't skip this very helpful part of the process. Like, don't just write same person or everything matches or something other vague like that, especially if everything doesn't match, which presumably in this case it wouldn't. So you would, as you go through that exercise of explaining why you're overriding the inconsistencies, you may realize that you actually don't have enough proof to merge. And if you don't have enough proof, then you definitely want to cancel the merge because, again, bad merges cause so many problems. In my opinion, it's much better to wait on a merge and be positive and leave a couple of duplicates in the tree than it is to go ahead and merge and have it be wrong and have all the problems that result from that. If you would like more information about reason statements, here is a webinar on reason statements, and this link will lead you to the YouTube recording of it. So that brings us to the end of our webinar with one last thing to mention. The new experience is being rolled out gradually. So when you start to merge, you may see the old experience. But good news, if you do and you want to turn on the new experience earlier than it is showing up for you, you can come to Family Search Labs, which is familysearch.org/labs. You get a screen that looks like this. One of the tiles is for the improved merge experience, and you just click the try it button. And then after you do that, when you start to do a merge, you will see the new experience that we've demonstrated today. So by way of summary, we talked about basic concepts of duplicates and merging, how important it is to be sure that a merge is correct. We also talked about why a new merge experience was needed to strengthen some of the shortfalls in the previous experience. We talked about intended identity and why that's so important in doing a merge, because when we rely on intended identity, then we can be a lot more certain that the merge is correct. And then finally, we did a walkthrough of the amazing new experience. So everybody, that brings us to the end. And Olive, do we have any questions? Oh, actually, I am seeing a question in the chat from my cousin Gordon. Hi, Gordon. So Gordon says if you happen to select not a merge, but later on you find out that the people really are a match, can you find it again? If so, how? Oh my goodness, that is such a good question. Let's see what time it is. Oh, we've got plenty of time. So I'm going to pop out of the slide deck. Okay, if I can make the machine cooperate. There we go. And go to Family Tree and show you how you can see that. So let me, um, I'm trying to just find somebody here that I've worked on lately. Okay, let's go to Mary here. So when you mark somebody not a match, that's essentially a dismissed hint. So the way you find it is on the person's profile page. Wow, that was weird. I thought I chose a Mary Hextall. Why did I get Thomas Cannon? Okay, anyway, that's what I thought I saw in the URL, but this works just as well. So if you want to see the dismissed hints, you come over here to the research help box and you hit show all. And if there have been any dismissed hints or dismissed helps, you click this and they'll show up here. This one says 0, so nothing has been dismissed here. But if I had tried to merge him and I had marked not a match, that dismissed hint would show up here. So, Cousin Gordon, thank you for asking that very helpful question. Okay. Oh, Marcia, good question. She says the why merges fail document mentions a read-only document. What is an example of that? So let's search for Elvis Presley. So famous people. Does anyone know when he was born? I should know because I used to live in Memphis. Elvis Presley. I'm trying to type on my little Presley. Let's just see if it comes up. I'm trying to find the I have no these people. See, I didn't put in a date. Shoot, does anyone know when he was born? I have no idea. Let's guess 1940. I'm revealing my ignorance here because I honestly do not know. Oh, Elvis Aaron Presley, is that him? Let's see if he's a read-only profile. And if he's not, I can actually go to like Joseph Smith or somebody. Nope, he's not read-only. Yeah, he's not read-only. So let's go to Joseph Smith then. Except I don't know for sure when he was born either. Shoot, you guys, anyone? Was he born about 1827, I think, in Vermont or something? Or maybe I can do Brigham Young. Well, I don't know when he was born either. So let's see. Let's try Joseph Smith. I actually am not sure it was Vermont, but I want to say I think I remember 1827. And let's do his mom was Lucy Mack Smith, so that would be easy to, let's see, Lucy Mack. Sorry, you guys, my keyboard is at a really awkward angle here. So, okay, here we go. So this record for Joseph Smith, who was the first prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is marked read only. You might laugh at this, for especially those of you who are members of the church, that people kept coming in and trying to like do his temple work when he didn't need it to be done. So they would there were so many duplicates created of him. So finally, the decision was made to mark him and other famous people as read only so that their records would stay in good shape instead of getting, badly merged or changes made that weren't accurate, that type of thing. Well, read-only profiles cannot be merged. So even if you found another Joseph Smith that you said, wow, this really does look like the same person, you would not be able to merge that other profile with this kind of official profile of him. So I hope that helps you guys. Yeah, oh, now I see in the chat, night 1805. Thank goodness it came up anyway, because my year was way off. So, okay. Any other questions in the chat?
There's
Let
one in
me.
the Q&A if you want to check that.
Oh, good. Thank you, Olive. I actually had forgotten about the Q&A. Let's pop over there. Okay, Kristen says, is the intended identity the first place where the person was created, like at the bottom of all the changes? Kristen, yeah, that's exactly right. So the change log is in reverse chronological order, which means the oldest stuff is at the bottom. So the original identity is going to be clear at the bottom of the change log. Thanks for asking that question. Any other questions? I'm going to bring the chat back up and just scroll up, make sure I haven't missed anything. Yeah, some good comments. The new process looks really great, John says. Let's see, and we answered Gordon's question. Oh, Terrell, thank you. Terrell brought up a great question, or a great comment, which I had actually forgotten to mention. And that is, let me go back into slideshow mode. Remember on the old merge that you could switch people? And on this one, I've got it so narrow that the word doesn't show. You just see the double arrow. If I made the screen wider, you would actually see the word switch, but the button shows up on the duplicate person. And if you would rather make the duplicate person the survivor, in other words, put them over here and put this guy over here, then you just hit the switch button here. Terrell, thank you so much for mentioning that. I need to add that to the slide deck. So let's see. I don't see any other questions that we need. Oh, Kristen asks another question. Are the ordinances for the two people that you merge also merged? Yes, great question. They are. And by merged, let me explain really what that means in the case of ordinances. So for temple ordinances, the earliest one is considered the valid one, and ones after that time are considered duplicates. So if one profile has ordinances and the other doesn't, then there's no problem. The ordinances just transfer and they end up on the survivor. But if there are conflicts, like say one was baptized in 2012 and the other one was baptized in 2014, the 2012 date is the one that's going to show up on the survivor. Oh, Judith says, I assume from what you've said that the PIDs do not automatically show in the reason statement. I loved that feature, Judith says. Me too, Judith. That was one drawback because what I would do, maybe you did the same thing, is I would choose one of the reason statements and then I would delete everything except um, the stuff that I wanted to keep, the names and the PIDs. But there is a little trick. I'm guessing most of you probably know about this, but in case not, let me show you. Let me bring Family Tree back up. And I won't go to a merge screen, but it works this way on the merge screen. Actually, you know what? I don't even need to be in Family Tree. I can just do it on the slide. So if you click the PID right here, it automatically copies it onto your computer clipboard, and then you can just paste it in. So, and you can actually select and copy the names as well, although that's a little trickier. So usually what I'll do is I'll type the name and then I'll copy and paste the PID, type the name, copy and paste the PID. So Judith, it's not quite as good as having FamilySearch populate the PIDs, but it's probably the next best thing. So thanks for bringing that up. Anything else, you guys?
Awesome, thank you. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you will join us for our next webinar on August 20th with Rachel Darenthal about Wrong Until Proven Right, Think Like a Genealogist. A recording of this webinar will be made available by next week. You can view that on our YouTube channel or our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu. or follow Facebook and Twitter. Thank you and have a wonderful week.